Hey guys, how's everything going? This is Jaser. So today's video is not about React, it's about Uno CSS. I'm interested in Uno CSS because recently I'm building my own CSS-in-JS solution called MigaCSS. The one mode of Uno CSS called Attributify mode is a bit slightly related to what I want to achieve. So I try to dive into the internals of Uno CSS to see if I can get some inspirations from it. And it turned out to be pretty interesting and not that difficult. So I put what I've learned into a blog post on jason.dev. You can you can read it from there, or you can continue listening to me explain it on YouTube. So before we begin, we need to understand the position of Uno CSS in the CSS-in-JS, I would say, industry. Uno CSS claims to be the instant on-demand atomic CSS engine. It's slightly different from what Tailwind does. We'll come to it. But first, let's take a look at the pretty standard piece of code about writing styles in markup. Like we have a markup like this. We want to create a style for it. We define a class and attach it through the class. And obviously, it's very hard to give it a naming. This binds the semantics of the markup to the styles. It's kind of like a weird situation, and this is a huge pain for us to give it a right name because the class name is global. We have to avoid the conflicts and make it concise, and it's pretty hard. Anyway, doing styling like this is not very scalable, especially in large web applications. Well, I think we could improve the situation by creating a compiler to breaking up the classes. But anyway, Atomic CSS tries to address this issue in a different approach. It separates the style from the semantics of the HTML markup. Making it atomic. So each CSS rule just do one thing. Font weight bold here, just to set the font weight to bold, and we can set the font weight bold, the class name to the class, and for an element in HTML, it could have multiple class names to achieve one style. It's kind of like an improved version of the inline style directly. And personally, I don't like this. I think it's abusing of class, the attribute of class, because originally if you set the class to it, it means that a bunch of elements should behave more or less the same, but now it's not. The class may be too long, and I don't like it. I don't like it. And Tailwind has this a lot of nicely built-in primitives, so the class name might not necessarily be this long. And Tailwind has become, I think, the de facto CSS atomic CSS solutions, right? It focuses on the creating easy-to-use primitives, including some UI widgets like cards or shadows, something like that. And here comes the Uno CSS. They're not they're technically not the same thing, although you can achieve basically the same thing from Tailwind in Uno CSS. I'll show you why it's a bit different. It's like the atomic CSS is that idea. It's the idea of creating utility styles, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to do it through the class name. As I said, it's kind of like abuse of the class name, right? Rather than class name, maybe we want to do it like something like this, like through the attribute. Rather than class name font bold, we want to say the font bold and text to base. This could be easily done through the JS. If we are using React, we could create a component for it. That's exactly what I want to achieve in my MigaCSS. But anyway, Uno CSS try to address this issue, I would say, not targeting at the nicely built UI primitives, but focusing on how to get the atomic CSS easily adopted with different kind of tools, Vite, Webpack, Webpack or anything else. So in Uno CSS, if we define the rules like this, we can use it normally as we expect it to work like this, or as I said, you can try something like this. So you can ignore the class name thing. This is called Attributify mode. Of course, you need some preset. But here's what I want to say. Uno CSS focuses more on the adoption of atomic CSS. So the question becomes, how does these two pieces of code works in Uno CSS, especially in Vite, right? Yeah, let's begin our journey. So to start with the Uno CSS, you can check on our homepage. There are 3 steps. First, we need to hook the Uno CSS into the Vite, right? So you need to add the plugin of Uno CSS into Vite. The second one is Uno CSS itself has a lot of features. You need to configure it with the rules and the presets and the plugins. This is what I said, Attributify mode. This is the rules we want to use. And third one is called import the virtual Uno CSS. It's kind of like an anchor or a placeholder. Like you can imagine that there will be a CSS, like the final CSS, but it's not ready, and we don't need to get into the contents of it. The Uno will build the CSS contents for us, so it's prefixed with a virtual. So after 3 steps like this, we're able to write code like this. We will dive into the details and understand why each step is necessary. So first of all, the most important thing is about the Vite plugin. It's based on rollup. So if you write a plugin and the rollup allows you to use a bunch of hooks to run some piece of code at a certain timing, and also accept the code from the previous step and add modifications to it. So it basically allows you to do everything in the code loading, code transformation, code generation. These 3 steps. So Uno CSS actually is a bunch of plugins. Each plugin does its own job. You can see from the source code, it's like Uno CSS plugin. There are a lot of plugins like here, and it dynamically injects the plugins based on some settings. We'll take a look at the global mode plugin. It's the default plugin, I would say. And also because if you think of one plugin to see what kind of CSS should be used, and a plugin to generate the CSS that is used, we need sort of data sharing, right? Because each plugin works separately. So we need a closure on top of them. That's what the context does. It holds the data so that each plugin could use. In the global mode plugin, this is plugin. There's some hooks like transform hooks and load hook. Load hook is where you define the original source code comes from. Generally, it should be dedicated to the Node.js require. It will read the file and return the string, and you can override it. Like if the ID match something, we will return something different. Here we will come back at it later because this relates to the virtual file. And also there's a hook called transform. This allows you to see the actual code and modify it, pass it on to the next plugin. So this Uno CSS global, you can see in the transform, it returns null. It means that it doesn't add any modification. It merely use the timing to see the code, because what the plugin does is only collects the usage or like extract the actually does is extract the tokens. It doesn't modify the code, so it returns null here. You can see that in the transform, it spawns different tasks which extract the code. Extract, we'll see it soon. Extract is the next step. Extract actually, you can see the details, but extract actually splits the code. I think here, Yeah, here. You can see that they actually split the code with some regular expression and treat the each piece of the code as a token. So though it is called token, it is not the same meaning of token in an AST sense. So it might contain different tokens together, because you can see that it's separated with what is it? Separate default split. Yeah, it's something like this. A split with quotes. This is interesting. Is that sure? Usually, if I am asked to generate tokens about a piece of code, I would try to parse the code, right? Give it each token its meaning to see where the token is used. But here, it actually Uno CSS doesn't do AST parsing. It just splits the code into different chunks and treats each chunk as a token. If we think about the font bold example here, like this, yeah, if we split the code by the double quotes and also the space and a single quote, it probably would cover all the cases, right? These tokens actually is not meaningful to us. We only need these kind of tokens. So we only need to make sure that the tokens defined in the rules are not missed in the token extraction. We don't need to extract all the tokens. So you can see that the difference here. So I think Uno CSS chose this way for better performance. Yeah. And yeah, but this has the caveat is that because we're splitting the code, we cannot literally tell if the token is used as styling or not. It could be anywhere in the code, right? So I've made up a simple example to demonstrate this. Is like if we type the keyword in the text, like font bold here, you can see the Uno CSS doesn't know that. It will treat that this token be, it extracts the token and generates the CSS, even though actually it is not used at all. So this is kind of like a false alert. This is trade-off. It doesn't break things, but it's just unnecessary. And Uno CSS chose the performance over this false alert. So this is the first plugin. This is the first step, is to collect the tokens of all the user's code. And the next thing is we need to check against these tokens to see if the rule should be included or not, right? So in the generate CSS, which is mentioned here in the load, there is a generate CSS. So if we are trying to load the Uno CSS because it's empty and it's designated to the Uno CSS, we need to generate the CSS from the tokens. So in generate CSS, we can see that it calls I would say it's like a common or general method called general uno.generate tokens. Inside generate, we can see that it process each token and try to parse the token to see if it matches sort of the CSS rules we define in our config. And the CSS rule are grouped by layers. It's CSS layers. We don't touch the details here. Basically, you can think of it as like a solution to the utility CSS, especially for CSS libraries. Anyway, here the get layers is generating the CSS code for specific layers. You can see like there's a join, there's a map. The get layer actually is to generate the CSS code, and this will join them together and return the whole CSS code for the layer. Anyway, for the parse token, this is called parse util. The util means utility class, I would say. Clearly, we can see that there's this part, this config rule set stacked in map. This is from the rule set in our Uno config. We define it as an object, but actually there will be some dynamic rule set it is handled differently. We'll take a look at a static one here. So simply, you can see that the process is the I would say it is the key, and you just check if it exists or not. If it exists, it will add the it will return the payload, and the payload will be added to the layer. So yeah, and then CSS generated. This is the generation of CSS for a specific layer, and when the generation is triggered, is the loading of virtual Uno.css. You can see here for the plugin, there's a load. As I said, it's a hook that allows us to intercept the loading of a module. Here, you can see that if layer is empty, it will stop here. The layer will resolve layer get path. The ID, you can think of it like generally the file name, the path, and in our resolve, here resolve ID is the hook that before the load. You can see that if it is virtual, it will replace it with the slash uno.css, like a string path in string. That's it. That's why import virtual uno.css is necessary, because the logic of generate CSS is in a load, and we have to have this load, right? But if there's no such import Uno CSS in our code, there's no such thing of generated CSS. It's only the extraction part. But I don't think this is necessary actually. I've tried to build a demo of MigaCSS that we don't need this part. We can actually inject this part in each user code. If we detect the token, well, this is an architecture thing. The Uno CSS actually collects all the tokens, even though not all the tokens are meaningful. If we are able to only choose the meaningful tokens at the extraction, then maybe we could just inject the code, import the virtual Uno CSS. But anyway, I'm not sure. It just feels a bit strange to import something only for the purpose of gluing things up, right? I don't think we want. I personally, I don't like this. But anyway, you can see why it is needed here. So actually, that's all for the Uno CSS. The one thing left is about the Attributify mode, is how we can achieve this, the p font bold and text space, without specifying the class names. There are 2 points need to be pointed out. Is like if you take a look at the generated CSS, you can see that it's not in the selector of class names. It's used the attribute selector. You can see the font and the tilde, the bold. It means like if the font has the bold, right? Yeah, it's kind of like wild card, and I don't think it's quite performant comparing to the class name. And also, even if we define the font, the bold like attributes on the intrinsic HTML tag, font actually text and the font both exist. I don't know, but anyway, even though we set the undefined, non-existing attribute, they are kept in final HTML. So this is some interesting part. We will see why it's necessary. Looking back at what we learned before this, we know that to achieve this, we need to treat this font equal bold as the font slash bold, not slash, the dash bold, right? So obviously the default extractor doesn't work. We need a separate extractor. And that's why we have a different extractor called inside preset Attributify. And you see that there is a regular expression called the valued attribute regular expression. It's something equals something which is quoted by double quote or single quote, something like this. honestly, I don't like the complex regular expression like this. It's not readable, the code. I don't know what they're doing here actually. I'm not sure either it covers every case or not. It just doesn't feel good. I prefer AST. It's definitely maybe it's not that performant, but it's accurate and guaranteed to work. Anyway, with this regular expression, the extractor will match it against the code. It will find all the key value pair. You can see here, we matched it. If we matched, we will get the name and content. So for font equals bold, the content is bold here, and the name is font. And here you see the map to this will generate different keyword like we see the tilde here. And obviously, in a generation, a CSS generation, we need. I think there needs to be some sort of normalization of this because we need to both support this and also the class name thing. We define font bold, right? Not this in our Uno config. So actually, it's inside of the parse token we mentioned before. There is a function called this match variant. So the raw is the font bold, but the matched variant applied will be returned with an array. The first is the raw one, but the second one is the normalized one. You can see that the matched variant give us the normalized rule key that we can use to match the rule set in our Uno config. And later, it's the same in the parse util. In the parse util, let's see, you can see that the input, it could be the string or an array of string. And if it is an array of string, we will get the process, which is the normalized one, which is the second one. This is raw, this is the second process one. And we can see that it's matched against the process one, which is a normalized key. And this is why the font equals bold will be treated as font bold, and it works. So yeah, that's it. That's for all what I want to talk about. How Uno CSS works in Vite. To summarize, it's just a bunch of plugins. It will some of the plugins look at the code and to see what kind of tokens are used, and then in loading of the Uno CSS, it will generate the CSS based on the tokens. We'll try to match the CSS rules we defined against the token to check the existence, and then we'll generate the final CSS and output it. So yeah, honestly, I don't like I don't like some of the choices of Uno CSS. It chose performance over the accuracy and the semantics, I would say, which is I don't like. I would like something more elegant in the output. So yeah, this is a perfect case of showing that in programming everything is a trade-off. Uno CSS choose the performance, but in Miga I won't choose the performance because yeah, I just want to make my life easier. I don't want to worry about the build time with better and better machines we're using. Anyway, that's all for today. Hope it helps. I would possibly would create another episode on Panda CSS, which is also interesting. It claims to be zero runtime solution, but I don't think it is what it claims to be. Anyway, stay tuned for my next episode, and